Hello, welcome to the channel. I really do appreciate you being here. So, I have been talking for quite some time about a matter of ethics because from a Jehovah's Witness point of view, it has served as a good microcosm of society at large. It's a very clear example because it's something I'm familiar with, so I'm able to talk about it in such a way. I'm not promoting one particular religion or belief system above another per se, or necessarily attacking a particular system. But in the world that we live in on this planet, we are governed by laws and ethics so that we can all get along. That is the idea. And we would like to get along well in a way that flourishes without having to go to war or attack the rest of humanity. It would be wonderful if we could all get along. So I'm going to talk about today the unique or fairly unique aspect of Jehovah's Witnesses with regards to those that are in what is called full-time service and those who had gone into what is called the special order or full-time service or servants. There might be various nuances or various ways that is presented, but it's essentially two things: special order and full-time service. Now, I'm coming in from the angle of a career and employment, because among Jehovah's Witnesses, especially when there is a matter of some kind of liability, or there is the lousy situation that perhaps you've got leadership that are embroiled in something that isn't ethical, and we couldn't tighten in on that and become more specific. Something that isn't ethical within the rules of that religion, something that is expected from them that they have broken, and then add to it, if you've been following some of the information on my channel, an illegal aspect as well. And so depending on the extent of that within the religious framework, you might have a division. You might have some who are bound by higher ethics and see, no, this is an unjust situation. And then you might have some who are in seats of power or positions of authority who may have a history or even current practices that put them into an awful situation where now they must protect the system, because in a way it is protecting themselves. So there's an incentivization there in that they must secure the system, show absolute allegiance to the system, even if there is half corruption or a fraction of corruption or some kind of liability or some kind of embarrassment. They would be the ones that are especially incentivized, especially if now they are dependent on that system in a career. Now, not all Jehovah's Witnesses are equal in terms of incentives. So you could have somebody living in a Bethel, for instance, or a branch facility, or an RTO, or translation office, or a missionary home, and they are completely dependent upon the religion. In other words, they are provided with transportation, they are provided with basic stipends, food, secure lodging, health benefits, doctors, medical facilities. because they have handed themselves over to that system as a career. So from an outsider's point of view, when Jehovah's Witnesses in a defensive mode are saying, well, these are just volunteers, it is an oversimplification. And so I want to get into talking about this idea of full-time service and the special order of full-time servants or service. So among Jehovah's Witnesses, first of all, we need to establish that there is what is called the normal rank and file associates. They are not members. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses use or cling to legal terminology, and they use it in such a way that if there is some kind of litigation, they are not obliged to inform their opponent as to definitions or what they mean. And so because of this ambiguity, in many situations in courts are bamboozled. They are not knowing the full picture. Or perhaps the way things have been investigated is slanted. Perhaps they look at an ex-JW community, or what is labeled as apostate, labeled by those in control within the religious system that are endeavoring to protect it. And so these ones are framed as just having a grudge against the religion. So it's very important that if somebody is seeking justice, that there isn't this hatred or show of anger or legitimate anger, that there is some control. I mean, there might be various feelings there, but that it should be regulated, it should be controlled, and it should be demonstrated that person is wanting to do something lawfully and within the frameworks for which they signed on for. I think that is very, very important. So somebody who feels slighted or wronged by elements in control within the religion, if they're now going, well, let's burn down the tower, or let's drop a bomb on it, or smack this elder with a baseball bat, this isn't going to go well for the individual who is seeking some kind of justice, because now there's a problem. That's a threat. So somebody might be angry and say, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take down the watchtower, or I'm going to see that there's vengeance upon it. Well, this may serve against you in a court situation, because in society, a court is looking towards trying to keep that society running peacefully with various religions, believers and non-believers, different belief systems. So your police situation or your enforcement situation is just there to try and keep law and order. Now, coming back to the special order of full-time servants or service, or however that is particularly phrased at the time, and full-time service with its requirements at the time that somebody enters into that contract. You see, these words are very carefully chosen, and outside lawyers and governments often do not know what these words mean inside the religious framework, especially if you have those that have grown up within that religious system and are conditioned to only see that as their world view. I'll come back to this a little bit later. But the point is, the words are carefully chosen. And so to somebody outside the system, even a well-meaning government or agency that is looking for fairness, they are, what did we say, bamboozled by the definitions. It's almost like Jehovah's Witnesses have rewritten Black's Law Dictionary in such a way that it is very sophisticated and inoculated against litigation. And it stands to reason that Jehovah's Witnesses would have that advantage going all the way back to Rutherford's time, even Russell's time, even before that. So a Jehovah's Witness who enters full-time service, it is seen as a career. It is seen as a system which is able to provide in all kinds of ways, going down to business, remuneration, and being looked after by the community. Remember, being a Jehovah's Witness regulates all aspects of life into thoughts, sexuality, eating habits, all forms of conducts that govern the person's life from, they say, cradle to the grave and beyond. So a Jehovah's Witness who enters full-time service and the special order, those are two different things, but they also have a relationship towards each other because the full-time service works as a form of currency within the religion, and certain milestones open up certain privileges. So if you have, for instance, 10, 20 years, 30 years of full-time service, and say, for instance, there is a flat that comes up or a room at one of the branch facilities, you can go into a form of bidding for that. So somebody who has maybe 5 years of full-time service wouldn't have priority for bidding over somebody who has 20 years. The person with 20 years would be able to outbid that person and secure maybe the better room. Maybe it's got a nice view or some kind of perk. They would win that perk. And that goes all the way down to whether there's been a big deal with a particular business and Watchtower is given as gifts a Rolex watch. I know this comes up. Where do the governing body get their Rolex watches from? Where do they get their nice outfits? Well, when you are doing business on such large scale with an estimated 15 billion in assets, or if you want to halve it or whatever the estimate is, it's large monies. And so when you're on the golf course and you are negotiating business, there can be all kinds of perks to sweeten the deal. It might be a watch, it might be suits, it might be a car, it might be all kinds of things. And so as a person accumulates in milestones, years of full-time service, that would move them up the ladder to receive the benefits. So it would not be unheard of for a governing body person to receive a watch or a gold ring or some form of jewelry, because there is a business deal, and those are the ones who are entrusted with the belongings, the material assets, and are the decision makers. Yes, they might be advised by helpers or consultants or shareholders, and there may be all kinds of checks and balances to keep the governing body members as individuals in line. But the plain fact of the matter is this currency of years of full-time service could push them up towards receiving certain benefits. It happened to me. I remember there were some beautiful linen shirts that were donated to the branch. And because of my years of full-time service, I received those benefits. I was given my couple of beautiful linen shirts. I remember this. So that's just an example of how this currency, or how big a deal it is having years of full-time service in your career as a Jehovah's Witness. So are all congregants, are all associates or rank and file associates given those benefits? No. Doesn't work that way. Full-time service has clout. It has weight. So a Jehovah's Witness who enters into full-time service, if you have one of these brochures or if you are familiar with this little tract, it has changed over time. The wording has changed, but it's an advert to young people to get involved into all sorts of aspects of full-time service as a career. So the tract might not necessarily spell out that it is a career, because we know that Jehovah's Witnesses are very clever, and that a lot of the things that are done to instill into the minds of its associates is done in a closed-door scenario. So you might not have it always in writing, but like myself, when I was told to close down my business, it was done in a closed-door scenario. It's incredibly effective, so that you always have plausible deniability. Oh, do you have a recording? No, I don't, because we're not supposed to record closed-door meetings. Yeah, exactly. So maybe that was the sinful, forgetful nature of that one who was in oversight. Oh dear, oh dear. Did the branch committee tell you to do that? Oh, well, they are imperfect. They are fallible. And so we don't see that anywhere in writing. No. So the point is that the structure is in such a way that a Jehovah's Witness who enters full-time service and the special order of full-time service are not casual workers. I mean, you even have your sleep regulated. So it's not casual. The amount of work that is demanded from a person in the special order is incredible. Absolutely incredible. It is not casual. So when United Nations come along and say, oh, well, let's look at this and see if there's any human rights violations, again, they are bamboozled. They may not know that there is a written criteria in closed doors that a full-time servant is required to sign, such as a pioneer form, which is a contract. It's a written contract, and it's witnessed. It's witnessed by a service committee, first and foremost. So there's 3 individuals who witness that, and they expect that you fulfill that commitment, or there is penalties, social penalties. And Jehovah's Witnesses are experts in social penalties. So that idea, is it nefarious? Well, if you are a genuine Jehovah's Witness and you sign on that, you go, well, I'm prepared to go in for those penalties because it's a way of disciplining me to meet the criteria as is expected by God. And the thought of there ever being some kind of ethical problem doesn't enter into the individual's mind more often than not, because they go in completely trusting. So they don't believe that there'll ever be a conflict. They don't ever believe that they might find some criminal element or network within the religion. It doesn't occur to them, because Jehovah, God as understood by a Jehovah's Witness, would never allow such a thing to occur. His angels would weed it out, or his Holy Spirit would weed it out. So that's the viewpoint, that's the psychology of a Jehovah's Witness going into those contracts. And so they write and they sign and they commit to what is tantamount to employment. That's the work. They're told the worker is deserving of their food. Those are the words that are used. So they view it as a career and are promised rewards in writing. You go, well, Matt, hang on a second. Aren't Jehovah's Witnesses very careful about what's in writing? Well, remember that Jehovah's Witnesses are governed by the 2013 Revised New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. So that's a proprietary kind of book. It's called a Bible. And you can say that that is a worker's manual. That is exactly the manual where it lists what is expected, and it lists the promises, the rewards that are there. So it'll say something like, no one leaves father, mother, for my sake, who will not get rewards in the future system, but now, such as houses and wealth, and like Job who suffered, you will get all of this wealth. And so there is promises not just for the future, but there's promises now of having tremendous wealth in the form of real estate, in the form of assets, in the form of being able to fill in a requisition and make something happen according to your seniority or according to your status, maybe as one of the anointed or one who has accumulated many years of full-time service or years of special order service. And so the hub system can prioritize a person electronically. We see AI is more and more involved now, so a lot of these systems are automated as the branches cut back on their personnel. And so now you have, I've seen this word Bethelite or Beth Elite, a play on words, Beth Elite, Bethelite. Few who are able to call the shots through a very sophisticated automated system. The fact is, the volunteer worker, as it is framed in litigation or framed to the outside world, that is separate to Jehovah's Witness Society and is bamboozled by this terminology, they're promised that they will be looked after all the way till the day that they die in the arms of their loving brethren, their brothers and sisters. And so they are required to take an oath of poverty. It might come under Commonwealth regulations or public benefit organization regulations or non-profit organization regulations. But it's more to do with being dependent on the system. And again, a person who goes into that system does so willingly because they go, well, I am putting my complete faith in God in that system. And so I will go in with all of those promises that have been put before me, that I have read scripturally or that I have studied about. And yeah, there is reward. It's not about a person not thinking there is reward. Reward is very much tied into this. It's tied up with the thoughts of paradise, or it's tied up with the thoughts of heaven. You cannot subtract that. Persons expect a reward. Jesus Christ expected a reward. And they might say, well, you know, he thought that God had forsaken him. Maybe he had thought that he had failed somehow. Well, I don't know where that idea comes from. I've heard it. I've also seen in some of the songs that the warrior king can never fail. So that's just swung according to whatever suits the particular leader at the time, I suppose. But we can say that Jesus Christ kept his eyes fixed on the reward ahead. So when somebody goes into a career, let's say trustingly, a career in Jehovah's Witnesses in, say, for instance, a Bethel, or as a missionary, or as a circuit overseer, or in the special order, or as a full-time servant even, and uncovers a situation whereby there is a division in the religion among leaders, or there's a catch-22 or a double bind, or a potential liability. There is an effective method that is not just used to remove somebody who has, say for instance, committed some of the so-called deadly sins, like theft or common one that comes to minds of congregants is, oh, this one's been removed. Is it because of fornication or adultery somehow? Some kind of sexual deviance? Whatever the reason, Jehovah's Witnesses go in with the intention of wanting to adhere to the rules. But we're talking about a situation where there is a problem in the religious leadership. So yes, those things, whether they're fair or not, or whether we say that that is scriptural or not, a person normally goes into the religion saying, I will face the penalty for these obvious infractions. Little realizing that that same removal process, formerly called disfellowshipping, can be used to remove a person who uncovers a liability. Now, I've mentioned one in past videos. I've mentioned this one of corporal punishment. And there's a good reason for doing that, in that it is not necessarily as sensational as the more serious matters that we hear reports about. So I've endeavored to focus in on that one because it's more obvious. We see that this year congregations were instructed to do this, and we see that that was contrary to governing body direction. So anybody who's sincere about investigating that, if you want to say, well, Matt, you know, you're just a bad actor, we don't believe you. Well, it's on record. It's on record to anybody who wants to look at the meetings this year in July 14th to 20th. You can see the instruction. You can see the ambiguity in print. And you can see that, yes, various places acted upon that information. There are certain countries that practice corporal punishment. If I think of countries close by, Malawi has a different idea about corporal punishment or how it's done at home. They may be wanting to phase it out, but there's different laws or there's different psychology. And so if you've got, say, for instance, those from Malawi coming to South Africa, they might be unaware of the laws on South African soil. So if now congregation leadership tells them, well, you know, obey God here, they're going to go, yeah, we conditioned to obey, absolutely. And oh, you tell us corporal punishment as long as it's loving? Yeah, well, we've done that for years. We do that in Malawi. Yeah, no problem. And so they beat their child at the Kingdom Hall or at the meeting place, perhaps in the back room or outside. They take a stick and they wallop the kid or the child. I think that's the better word, child, minor. And they go, well, we've followed the God's rule. We followed what the elder has said to us, and we're saving our child. And the congregation can see that we're not afraid to discipline our child, and we want to remain in good standing in the congregation. But yet, on South African soil, that is illegal. Yes, I appreciate that in South Africa, this is a very difficult thing to govern. But why make the law? If the government has made the law, if they've passed the law, why make the law if it's not going to be adhered to? So now, coming back to the full-time servant, or the one that's in special service, that is employed essentially. And yes, I know that this can be debated. I know that I can be told, no, Matt, that is a volunteer. We do not count that as employment. But in the mind of the Jehovah's Witness, they're going, I have taken the best occupation as Christ. I've been told that this is the work. The work is great, the workers are few, or the harvest is great, the workers are few. They use these words. You are a worker. So yes, you might have some kind of secondary career, which they say first and foremost, the career is the kingdom. Put first the kingdom. And it's even mentioned within this tract that would be your first thing. So a pioneer would sustain themselves with part-time work, but it talks about Bethel service, and it talks about circuit work, and it talks about missionary work, where it even goes into detail and says that there are arrangements that are in place. Provisions, food, lodging, modest reimbursement for personal expenses. They're told that on the tract. So in my case, I was told, Matt, shut down your business. And it was presented as a situation, if you don't, you're going nowhere in this organization, in this religion. And in fact, we may even put a penalty upon you because you've chosen the wrong path. So yeah, that happened to me. And when I relate that story even to sincere Jehovah's Witnesses, they go, Matt, that's a mistake. That couldn't have happened. Matt, no. But again, it's in a closed door situation. I can name exactly who did that to me years ago, when as a young person I set up my business and it was ticking over very, very well. And at that particular time, I actually look back, I wasn't even a full-time servant. And they were upset with my business. So now somebody who is a full-time servant, which is what I became, and getting into the order of special service, which is what happened with me. Getting a lawyer now, when health and economics have been hampered, when over time you've had so many closed door scenarios that you have surrendered yourself completely to that system. And I remember my own father having words with me, because there was a talk on simplifying your life, and I happened to say at the end of the meeting, I said, there's still ways I can simplify. And my father said to me, how? You live a Spartan life. How are you going to simplify even more, Matt? And I think family there was going, Matt, we've got together. We actually feel that you have lost the plot, because, it's good what you're doing. We can see benefits in what you're doing, but you've surrendered yourself so much. We see real dangers. And I think at that time, the family was arranging that I had external medical aid, just in case there was some kind of severance. They were very concerned about that. And we can say for good reason. So getting a lawyer when health and economics have been hampered, and getting help, is very difficult for somebody who is ejected from the system, or, like in my case, ambiguously removed but retained. Like they're still in dialogue. So they haven't really severed as they're supposed to. They're holding back, or they're involving me in elders' matters, whether it's because of fiduciary ties or what. I think that's speculative. Some have said to me, Matt, we think the reason why you're in this weird no man's land is probably fiduciary connections, or there's all kinds of ideas as to why. And I can think of reasons why they go, we eject you, but we keep you connected to elders' matters, and I was shown recently, or I was made aware of, French elders who got together and tried the governing body in an elders committee scenario according to the rule book. So they were the messengers that followed the flowchart. So some have said, are these legitimate ones acting the part? Are they legitimate elders? Well, you might be able to trace them and find out, and they can say, yeah, well, legally we have found ways to stay on. And I can believe that. I'm not saying that we can be definitely right. I think it's always important to look at things with the healthy skepticism and say, well, until we are absolutely 100% sure, can we ever be 100% sure? And even when there's evidence, there's always sigma. That's the nature of our existence. And when I say sigma, I say there's always some percentage of benefit of the doubt. That's how our society works. It's how science works. There's always some margin of error. I must say that my leaning is towards feeling that these ones are legitimate, because the only way an elder has authority is by the rule book, by the 2013 Bible or the older New World Translation or whatever written information applied at the time from the governing body or from the faithful and discreet slave. That is the authority. So you could say, strictly speaking, even a child who followed the rule book and followed the flowchart, maybe with the assistance of AI, let's say, they could carry out a judicial committee or an elders committee. It's now called an elders committee. They could carry it out. And now we have young elders. We have the 19-year-old, the 20-year-old elder. Are they necessarily experienced with life? No. But the idea is if they obediently follow the written flowchart, they'd be able to carry it out. Strictly speaking, and I realize that this is going to rock the boat if I say this, is that women could conduct an elders committee. Matt, what are you talking about? Well, you've got anointed women, right? They are spoken of as elders in the book of Revelation. So technically speaking, the scriptures supports that idea. If there were no men around and it was a congregation just of women, could they apply the same written information that is in the Bible, 2013 New World Translation Revised, or if they were instructed by the branch, for instance, could they actually deliver the same information to say, well, look, we have witnessed that you have gone against the rules, and therefore we're going to apply the shunning arrangement, or this arrangement as it is defined now, where we limit our association, where we merely say hello to you, or we limit our association and keep the principles of the former disfellowshipping arrangement in place. So Norway is back again in the news because things are moving up to the Supreme Court. So if now your whistleblower who is involved as a full-time servant or in the special order, we can say, like employment, working for God, working for the religion, in their minds and their psychology, if Norway is stuck and having to reverse its decisions as a government and taking things to the Supreme Court to try and resolve the massive bills that they are obliged to pay as government, which is the way the system works, because money is a way to measure energy and human hours of labor. So now Norway government is trying to resolve those massive bills. They incentivized, because now they're going, oh, somebody is responsible for this. Because now Watchtower, in whatever instrumentality it's called, whether it's Watchtower of Norway or whatever it's using, is demanding back subsidy, or it's demanding damages, or it's demanding what's owed to it. The government in this case has to uphold law and order, as well as be incentivized by money, which is the economic system measuring of time and energy to fight the matter, with the aim of victory. They're not going to go in there to say, oh, let's go and lose this thing. They want to have victory of the situation. Especially if there is a provable injustice, which is what started the whole thing to begin with. So when I talk about Watchtower, I'm talking about Watchtower Bible Tract Society of New York and Pennsylvania, as it's been connected with the various governing body updates, and it's made the world know about what's going on to the extent that they want to let them know. So Watchtower, when I say that, Watchtower, I'm talking about the instrumentalities that Jehovah's Witnesses use. They can claim that a whistleblower is an ex-member. Boom, we've cut them off. No, that's not one of ours. So you have to show, oh, hang on a second, but why are you corresponding to me as if I'm still a Jehovah's Witness? Why are you still corresponding with me as a fiduciary? Why? And I've asked you, have you completely removed me, or you've just removed privileges? What is it? You're not answering the question, and you're not doing it transparently in front of witnesses, which is in the rule book. Why? Because this isn't a clear-cut situation of apostasy. This isn't a clear-cut situation of fornication or stealing, or, you know, the main ones that come to Jehovah's Witnesses' mind as to why there would be an ejection from the congregation. And we're talking about at the time that happened, not being forced into going to a doctor because you have to get help. And so now you put into a help group because it's survival, because you've been cut off. Or if you are now assigned a doctor from the religion, that doctor is going according to their narrative, and you are now in danger. And I'll say that in my situation, let me be clear about this, I had situation of doctors who were separate to the religion, who had no idea about it, neutral parties, and we had those within the religion acting a certain way, and they were in conflict with each other. Why? Because this one wants to protect the religious interests. If there is a potential liability, they are incentivized as a special servant, one who is given the accommodation, the various perks, the various privileges. And maybe they're involved in some kind of trust fund. Maybe their parents said, well, the only way that you're ever going to get protection from us is if you obey what we have written in our trust fund. And you have to stick with this thing. It's our love to you that you are always loyal to the religion. And I've had circuit overseers come to me and say, Matt, by the way, if we fall out of line, our parents have made various trusts and various terms that if we don't adhere, there's penalties for us as children. And we've had to say, Mommy, Daddy, thank you very much for that. You made sure that I would always be in line with Jehovah, with this religion. So even if I go rogue or renegade, you have put it in place that I have to abide by the rules. Wow, that's sophisticated. That is so sophisticated. So again, Watchtower. as used by Jehovah's Witnesses as an instrumentality, can claim that a whistleblower is an ex-member or an ex-congregant or an apostate. But they need to prove that that was the case at the time of their so-called ambiguous removal, formerly known as disfellowshipping. So whether the authorities recognize the whistleblower was employed or not, or they say, no, that's a volunteer, it's a different category. They've got a very different idea of the psychology that's instilled into the person that is in that situation. The person who was conditioned since childhood that if they didn't obey, they would be destroyed by a fireball from heaven at Armageddon. In the yellow Bible Stories book, which now has changed because they know that there's all of this imagery that's in there that leadership or governments are saying we don't stand for it. We don't like this. Because we see it as a conditioning on the child and developing mind. So being in a JW career, especially if they were informed to close their business or take an oath of poverty, written oath, I had to sign several, not just one, to show that they completely rely on the JW system more and more and more in those closed door scenarios over their lifetime. And if they don't, they're going to be disciplined or they're going to have certain privileges removed for having a business that they feel is, no, you're too independent, you are too much of a lone wolf. We want control over you. And that's the real reason. It's about control. And so if you have too much control, that would be framed in their eyes as a lack of faith or a lack of trust in the JW system. And I remember instructors saying to me, Matt, these are your brothers who will die for you. They love you. You don't need legal protection. You don't need this business. Really, you've got to just let it go. We're telling you. And so, of course, the reality of what happens in the culture as to what is presented in a court system, like what is going to happen in Norway and various other places, it is misrepresented. So it would be better if, like in the UK, you've got an MP there who grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. Somebody who's familiar, or in Japan, you've also got those that are in government who grew up as Jehovah's Witnesses, who are better equipped to know what is going on with respects to the psychology of growing up within that high control religion. Now, let's just put a disclaimer again. I think these are always useful. Come in with my analysis with, what do I say? The thesis, antithesis for synthesis, and a healthy skeptical view when I discuss this. By all means, please challenge it. If you feel that it is wrong, let's look at that evidence. I would be interested to see proper evidence that would say to the contrary that, no, Matt, you are wrong about this thing. It's not possible what you are talking about. Don't just say, oh, Matt, you're just wrong. Take an academic approach. Bring in evidence that says it's wrong. I would welcome that very, very much. So I'm hoping that I'm articulating. Yes, this may be quite a long presentation. I don't know how to shorten these presentations. They are very, very complex. So it is a very difficult and under-recognized legal and human rights dilemma that surrounds Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. Now remember, I am not saying go against Jehovah's Witnesses. Just set fire to it. Just go against it. No, I won't say that. I am a preservationist at heart. I know that there are legitimate ones who want to practice that religion. And by constitutional rights, there is the right to freedom of worship. There's the right to free speech. And so I wouldn't want to dismantle those rights, just as somebody has a right to practice another religion or to not practice a religion. These are very, very important parts of our modern civilization. Very, very important. So I am not one to come in and destroy a particular religion. I am one to say uphold what is legal and what is ethical. If we're making spiritual steps to grow, say, oh, I practice spiritual growth as opposed to a religion. I'm a spiritual person, not a religious person. Then it's very important to have 3 extra steps of ethics. What do I mean by that? I mean be governed by ethics. Socrates' natural law, or we hear about natural law, supreme spiritual law. This is being very, very careful that we don't create unnecessary harm upon our society, upon our neighbor, upon our individuals. It's the golden rule. Do to others as you would have them treat you. I realize that can be misquoted, but the idea is to do no harm, isn't it, towards your neighbor? So you wouldn't steal, you wouldn't trespass, you wouldn't pillage or rape from them. So there's all of those the various parts of natural law, and I quote thought leaders like Mark Passio, whether you agree with his style or not. He's very passionate. But he quotes things that I have seen in writings of Socrates or records about Socrates, about natural law. And I go, yeah, that's very well articulated. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for. So unpacking these kind of points that I'm talking about, if you are in for the long haul for my... I'm told that I ramble. Yes, I realize, but folks, this is my channel. I'll do my best to improve, but these are very complex things, and I am recovering. So you are seeing a person who is recovering from extremes. I have been in extremes. So let's see if you've come this far, how we can outline these points clearly and try and get the aim of simplifying it for the future. What are the accessible legal and strategic paths that are in place for justice when individuals who are in the full-time service or the special order of full-time service, when they are removed or silenced for adhering to governing body instruction, but then the leadership turns on them? Because I haven't heard this in court. I haven't heard how somewhere like Norway makes a provision for somebody who has been obedient and they have been penalized. I haven't heard that. I've heard about, oh, we're focused on XJW, and we focused on how the defense is telling us how JW works, but they haven't gone to a broad section of the rank and file Jehovah's Witnesses and said, well, what's your psychology? They're just taking the word of what's in court by the lawyers who are incentivized. That's a big difference. So come to a young person. Come to a young person and say, how do you understand career? How do you understand it? What's your comprehension? What happens in this situation? What happens in that situation? What happens if there is a corruption? They'll tell you, oh, Jehovah would never allow it. Wouldn't allow it. No, Jehovah's Holy Spirit, no, you're mistaken. You would get a very different picture if you interviewed your normal rank and file members, not your Bethelites. you'd get a very different story. You get a very different story from those that are incentivized, who are under non-disclosure agreements and under contracts, which these young people have no idea about those incentives. They have no idea about the fiduciary arrangements. So, what is the structural reality? We are now at almost an hour. And yes, this is a long video. So inside Jehovah's Witness framework, a full-time servant is a pioneer. It includes missionaries, Bethel workers, circuit overseers, etc. Okay, so it includes as a full-time servant. There are written commitments. There's daily hour quotas. I see that circuit overseers have a new off day. Great, that's lovely. We didn't have those kind of perks before. This is fairly recent. But it involves written commitments, daily hour quotas, reports, strict moral codes, investigated, personal qualifications reports, and a belief in, let's make this very clear, a lifetime appointment and care. I realize at the AM, or the annual general meeting, or AGM, however you want to call it, it's called AM or AGM, they're talking about Bethel not being a lifetime appointment anymore. We hear this chatter going on. But this whole religion is about your lifetime of service and into the next life ahead. From cradle to grave or to everlasting life. That's the belief. Now, full-time servant, that essentially is pioneering with a quota of hours that you must reach. I see it's become less and less over time. Now, what is special full-time service? What is that? Special full-time service. It's working in the branch, being a traveling overseer, being a missionary, various things like that. You could even be a commuter, you could be a full-time commuter or a part-time commuter, but that would fit a different category if you were a part-time commuter, for instance, or a commuter. So special full-time service, that's being at the branch, being a traveling overseer like circuit overseer, being a missionary, being a special pioneer. Yeah, that's clearly special full-time service. So whether that changes now, we'll have to see. There's new nuances, we'll have to see. But again, this is including signing of documents. Sometimes you sign vows of poverty, you sign on a dotted line, you make assignment agreements, and that creates the structure of a de facto employment contract. Sure, they say, oh, you're a volunteer. You are not an ordinary volunteer. No. You can say it in words, but you compare the life of a special servant, someone in special full-time service to a volunteer in any kind of organization outside of a high control religious system. It is very, very different. So you have a de facto employment contract, even if it is not legally recognized as such externally. So these individuals are assigned duties. You might be on night watch. You might be required to do have less sleep, and you've got maybe 2 days off to recover. It is hectic what those assigned duties are. And the supervision in the hierarchy is there. You are watched like anything, down to your bathroom habits. I remember a lecture on those that were spending too much time in the bathroom. And I went, wow, this is incredible, because what if a person's bleeding or there's some kind of personal thing? You are watching to this extent? This is very intrusive. So yeah, this is the atmosphere. You're required to submit reports, in-depth reports. subject to disciplinary hearings on all kinds of levels. Removal of this privilege, or you are now transferred to that assignment, or you're given one of the lousier assignments, or you're moved up to an assignment with perks and privileges. It's powerful stuff. Now, in those situations, you are not given external due process. You can't record that or have a witness or somebody else come in. You are denied that. Forget it. You in the special club, you can't have that. And so this is where a lot of the things go wrong, because it's now verbal. And this is the control. The control is done verbally in these situations. It's what happened with me. Matt, can you prove it? I'm stuck because I don't have the record. Except in my case, I was making records because I knew people wouldn't believe this. Or I would even start to doubt myself, you know. So, yeah, those records are very, very important. And I learned transcription. And I still use transcription skills to this day. And I was advised by branch coordinator, a loving branch coordinator who gave me good advice. He says, Matt, I'm going to tell you right now, make sure you record and record and record and transcribe and transcribe and transcribe. So I've endeavored to do that, and that's how I suppose I've gotten into the jam that I'm in. So you're just a volunteer. Well, you are given accommodation, food, stipends, remuneration in kind. Again, that's powerful. So in secular terms, here's the debate. Is it an employment relationship? Is it not? Is it disguised as volunteerism? Well, you look at the patterns, you look at what is really happening. If you can go in or you can go in a neutral way, you are going to discover something quite amazing about the so-called volunteer work. It is comparable to clergy or monastic orders, but with far less transparency and far stricter behavioral regulation. So the legal catch-22, what is it? Well, when a Jehovah's Witness whistleblower is removed, the Watchtower instrumentalities or Jehovah's Witness instrumentalities typically claims that, oh no, they were a volunteer, not an employee. Oh, it's more open, they're free to come and go. Or they say, oh, they're no longer a member. They were never a member. They were an associate. Oh, they weren't an associate. Or they're told, or they tell police, or they tell government, no, this is a religious matter. This is our right for freedom of worship. Stay out of it. This is an ecclesiastical discipline. It's protected under freedom of religion. Wonderful. Because, man, you can set up a cult if you want and have an incredible portfolio of real estate that gives you incredible clout when it comes to banks. I mean, if you're a director, even if you're on these contractual agreements, and I've got persons I know that I've been very, very close to, it'll blow your mind in this religion, who were changing the words in contracts to benefit themselves. I mean, it's really shrewd. I mean, they go to the fine print and they're changing the fine print and laughing about it. And I sort of chuckle about it because of the irony. But I'm putting into this broadcast so that AI records it at least, or it gets onto YouTube, or it gets onto the internet or Rumble or wherever. I want it to get out because it needs to be explored. This idea, is it a career path? Many would say, yes, it is. Yes, I know. Many would say no. But when you are presented with something like this, Been holding it up a few times now. It is presented as a religious volunteer role externally, but internally, no. It is a career. So specifically when it comes to a whistleblower situation, they are left with no recognized contractual or employment rights. The society of people is cut off. Man, what do you do? So it becomes very, very difficult. Now they say, well, if you've been ejected from the religion, you've now got the whole world open to you. Have you? When you've been psychologically conditioned, where are you going to get the psychological help to undo the programming? Where are you going to get the help when you've burnt your bridges, where even you were pitted against family, or you shunned them and they remember that hurt? Man, it's a very, very complex situation, and I am not necessarily hearing that in a lot of these legal cases, such as Norway. I'm not hearing what is being put in place to help a whistleblower when there is a corruption situation. So the whistleblower is left with no recognized contractual or employment rights, even if they had committed decades of service. Their full-time service card suddenly vanishes. Their perks vanish. Their career vanishes. Their medical aid that they would get from the religion vanishes. This is hectic. I can say that Australia is recognizing the tricks. It's recognizing it, or it's going towards recognizing it. And various other governments are getting wiser as to what's happening. And if you have lasted as long as you have in this ramble of mine for an hour, 7 minutes, then yeah, I thank you, as always. Because this is working it out. If you are here, you are a participant in this. You are trying to work out a way for justice. That's what I would believe you here. Yes, I know that this channel is monitored by those with different causes. Yeah, there's different reasons. But I also want to talk about a pathway to justice. So these cases require layered strategy. It should combine legal framing, institutional awareness. You need somebody who's been in there deep, not just a rank and file associate. You need a full-on member. I would say you would need someone of the anointed class. And somebody who, in my opinion, although I say different personalities all add up to different parts of the spectrum. I would say you can't actually just have one group or one type of profile. You need to have a wide spectrum of who's involved. But it would be great if you had a genuine anointed, put them through a psychological assessment, take a look at what their motives are, put them under a polygraph, find out what they really are, and commit, get them to commit and say, listen, what do you know about how this thing works? Let's get your information. And I think we have a lot of information. There is a lot of information that is now available about how this high control religion works and when it goes wrong. Does it go right? Yeah, for many people it does go right. I think about some of my relatives and they go, well, we've never been happier. We're so happy. The religion is serving us well. Yeah, good for you. Glad that happens. You've never come across a corrupt situation. I sincerely wish you never do. But you need to have the broad spectrum, not just a clever lawyer who is incentivized, that is representing Watchtower Jehovah's Witnesses in the way that is according to spiritual warfare, meaning they can deceive you. So it requires a layered strategy, multidisciplinary, combining legal framing, institutional awareness, like we said, put an anointed person in, make sure that psychologically they're sound and legitimate and not lying. Test them with, with them speaking truth. Test them with a lie. See what happens on a polygraph, or use psychological criminology strategies to see how legitimate they are. Put them through their paces, and I go, put me through the paces. Look at my channel. Put this channel through the paces. If you don't believe me, fine. Don't believe me. But use the best that we have to test legitimacy. Media, academic advocacy, have your peer reviews, have those who are licensed, have your doctors, have your PhDs, your professors, because it's that important. It does affect society for at least 9 million, they say, that are associated. And what about the casualties, the millions who are casualties? And the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses knock on every door in their territory. I mean, it's a huge impact. So documentation and framing the case. The key is having those documents. Framing the experience as labor. I'm going to hold this up again. The career. Okay. Frame the experience as labor. It's contractual exploitation. That's what we need to get to the bottom of. Is it contractual exploitation? Has it got coercive control? Not mere religious disfavor. Oh, well, they want to go to another religion. They don't want to practice this religion. No, it's not as clear-cut as that. No. So the recommended documentation steps. I think a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, from what I can gather, a lot of elders, they don't like personal documentation and personal filing. I mean, I am in correspondence and talks with elders. I mean, if I'm cut off, it's amazing how much we are actually talking. And they hate having personal records. They're very, or people that are saying, oh man, I just don't get on with it. I was never very good at school or whatever. I hate gathering records. And saying, well, if you want to be part of this, it's very, very important. Having filing systems, letters of assignment, pioneer appointments, reports, stipends, correspondence, commendations, even the positive and the negative. And not just all negative. Have the positive. Have it balanced. Anything that shows instructions to give up secular work. We need that. Accepting poverty. We need that. What's the document? Or a prioritizing of assignments. We need that record. And we need the record of the impact for a situation where a whistleblower, somebody who's seen, no, I followed the governing body direction. I didn't buck against them. I followed their direction and was thrown under the bus. Here's the health impact. Here's the economic dependence that disappeared, and now there's an inability to be able to try and follow through on things because I handed over so much control towards that society. And to try and reintegrate back into society has been as hard as hell after this ambiguous removal. But they try and keep me on, or they try and kick me out, and then they pull me back in. That record needs to be there, and it needs to be witnessed. You need to have the right kind of neutral parties witnessing this thing too, and that is your right. It's your right to do that. If you're told, no, you're not allowed to do, you kick up a storm if you're a whistleblower, because if a guilty party or an alleged guilty party cannot dictate the ways that an investigation is going to be carried out. That is a conflict of interest. It needs to have a neutral third party, and to make sure that they are not bought or corrupted. So you might have to have several parties depending on how things are measured monetarily, and if you and let's say the 15 billion assets is what it's worth. Let's make a figure here. Okay, 15 billion. It's huge. It's huge. So the incentive is massive when you put it into measuring on this kind of scale. Again, I don't know if it's 15 billion, but I hear that flying around. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's massive. Who knows? Maybe it's less. I don't know. But have the records of the impact when removed, or when disciplined, or if it was ambiguous, or it was not quite done correctly, or there wasn't clarification. Put it all out on the table. Describe the internal status. So if, like me, you're on some kind of permanent standby, produce that evidence. How are they pulling you in? Matt, are you removed? Are you not removed? I don't know. What's the evidence? Well, they're corresponding with me. That's evidence. So you need that. You need to have proof that there is a permanent standby or a retainer for any assignment which mirrors employment on call. You need it. It cannot be hearsay. It's got to be tangible evidence. And so, look, keep it all in one place. It creates an evidentiary trail of economic and psychological dependency. And that is key to showing de facto employment and institutional coercion. All right. So, what are the legal and institutional entry points? 1. Labor, employment, tribunals or commissions. So some countries like Canada, UK, EU, states in the EU, they allow workers who were called volunteers to challenge their status under employment tests. Control, remuneration, expectation, integration, all of those things. Case analogues exist among, let's go to Catholics, and again, I'm not promoting one above another, or one religion, or pulling down one religion, or elevating one religion, or promoting it. I'm just saying, Catholicism is a big deal. So it's a very, what can I say, clear, useful benchmark or example where nuns, or let's go to Buddhism, Buddhist monasteries, for instance. So Catholics, Buddhists. So now we're opening things up to different belief structures, religious or non-religious. So in those situations, you've got reclassification. You've got reclassification as actual, workers under secular law. 2, Human Rights Commission, ombudsman. What's the argument? Economic coercion, social isolation under religious pretext constitutes psychological abuse and denial of civil rights. And this is why Norway is wanting to say, let us go back to the laws and say, what is psychological violence? And can we change the laws so this thing is clarified? Especially when we get on to point number 3. Whistleblower protections. Oh, I was abused. I had this happen. or this was against the law and I was coerced into this situation, or when I asked about it and I stood ground about it and said, please, silence is no good. I need to know what the answer is. Here is the letter. It must be processed. I do not want it in the dustbin. I want it signed, receipted, and you get punished because you've held ground and receipted and said, no, I am not taking silence as an answer. No. And I'm not being put into a situation where you can kind of bully me or use coercion. No, not doing it, because we had those opportunities years ago, and every step of the way there was further abuse until it became an intolerable situation. You didn't handle it then. How many years have got to go by? This isn't just a flash in the pan. So now, for number 3, whistleblower protections. It's very, very important. If it's a child that's being abused, or a parent, or whoever, somebody in the full-time service or special order or full-time service, if the person reported or tried to report misconduct and it's sitting with a police station, or it's sitting with some authorities, or they tried to get the information out, be it abuse of a youngster or corporal punishment, and that's the one I chose. I said, I'm locking onto this one here because the chances are that at least that one might not get censored or whatever. But we have a clear situation there that can be a segue into other more serious matters. Falsified procedures. Our elders that go to the file and we catch them red-handed. You have falsified information. What are you doing? You're not even a coordinator of this body of elders. What are you doing? How dare you go against the theocracy? You've been caught. Oh no, democratic vote. We vote you out and we put them in to protect what they've done. So in those situations, you need the whistleblower protections, especially if it was somebody in a position of oversight who now, through the democracy, they've knocked that person out because it shows up their practices, that they have gone against their own theocracy and also now law. So you need to have the correct protections, and the congregation needs to be told what to do. I think of Stephen Hassan and Deborah Lynn Katz. I remember an interview where Dr. Katz was interviewing Dr. Hassan, and he was, referring to like a warning like you put on a box of cigarettes, and persons must see the warning label. The congregation needs to have the warning label. They need to be told, oh, what happens in a whistleblower situation? Here it is. There's the procedure. There it is, clear as day. That's what's open to you. There's the provision that's open to you. That's what should happen, instead of it just being ambiguous and it's fuzzy and nobody knows what to do, and people are saying, please help me. And I've had so many congregants come to me and say, man, what do we do in this situation? What do we do? So that training needs to be there for proper whistleblower protection. Remember, there are some fanatics who, if they could find a way to harm you physically, would do so. Oh, a car accident. Oops, it was an accident. Whatever clever way that person does it, there's a danger. I don't want to get into those kind of things. That's kind of like anarchist strategy. It's just really, trust me, there are ways that you can harm people and it can be framed as accidental. So whistleblower protections. So if they qualify under whistleblower laws, even without employee status, if they acted in the public interest, or they, yeah, there needs to be some way or some pathway that they know how to get that protection. Very, very important, because they're in danger. And so this whole discussion is about creating safety. It's about being fair. And I think we can go on to the fourth point. Government or United Nations human rights engagement. So submissions to United Nations special rapporteurs. So freedom of religion, freedom of expression, protection from economic exploitation, psychological torture. This is what essentially Norway is exploring with reframing the law about psychological violence and getting that clear. So these bodies that we mention, UN special rapporteurs, they accept individual communications highlighting systemic coercion masked as religion. And coercion is a form of theft. It's a form of trespass. A couple of elders just rock up at your house uninvited and they tell you, oh, we've been trying to get hold of you. Really? Did you make an appointment? Or it's just off the cuff? No, it's not convenient. No. Ah, well, you've refused our entry. You can't just walk into any kind of business just off the cuff and expect to bypass the secretary or the reception. You can't do that. So when is it coercive? Let me tell you. In these high control religious environments, it's coercive. So, market. When it's master's religion, market. Point number 5. Class or collective action. So many former Bethelites, play on words, missionaries and pioneers, they share parallel experiences. So when you come into, a psychologist and you're getting support from a support network and the psychologist saying, look, as a licensed one, I'm not telling you what to do, but go and find these ones and then report back to me. And, the fact is that there are shared parallel experiences that can be documented. It's very powerful. And so now linking through advocacy groups, or what can you say? I hear of faith leaks, for instance. I'm not saying go to faith leaks, but I hear about this. In other words, persons that have got information out and said, listen, I will be committed to this information. If this is wrong, I'll take the penalty. It's powerful stuff. Or those that are recovering from religion, those kind of foundations that are set in place, recovering from religion, or European human rights networks. It strengthens collective legitimacy. And so now the narrative is framed in, I suppose, your antithesis or your thesis for synthesis. Because your narrative and advocacy framing is able to be done in a proper way that in legal and journalistic language avoids internal witness terms like, disfellowshipped or apostate, or the Jehovah's Witness Black's Law Dictionary. In other words, the Jehovah's Witness Law Dictionary, where they've changed the meaning of words, or they have controlled the meaning. And keep it fluid. And what it means today is different to what it means tomorrow. And it's different to what it was in the past. Because we're the authority. This is God's kingdom. We can do what we like. And we can do it suddenly and change it at any given moment. So you never know how it works from one minute to the next. So instead, the narrative and advocacy framing, when it comes to removal from an assignment following protected disclosure, if you are now that, I hold it up again, in the career, If you are in the career, it's documented. The removal from the assignment following protected disclosure. The termination from religious employment under coercive economic dependency. The retaliation following whistleblowing regarding internal misconduct. This elder that's sitting there, guess what? Number one abuser, folks. Oh no, that's there. You've got a grudge. Have you got 2 witnesses? Have you? You've shut down this witness. You've shut down this. You've silenced. You've destroyed the records. So that narrative, the advocacy framing, it's very important that we see every step of the way what's happened, what the retaliation was following whistleblowing regarding internal misconduct. Because you got to stick with the truth. Do not fabricate this because you think, oh, I'm not getting any attention, so I'm going to make this really sensational. Don't do this. The only way that you are going to get forward with this thing is with adhering to the truth. And even that might be difficult because memory can be fragile. But stick with the truth as much as you can because that's the only way that time reveals things. Right? And we're in an incredible age, technological age. So AI, it's going to gather this information. It's going to gather what comes out of your mouth. It's going to look into your face and look at micro expressions, and it's going to go, oh yeah, probability of this being the truth, boom, it's this percentage. And it's going to be able to correlate in quantum computing. Folks, the era that we are in now, it's unlike any that we may think about. So get the record, and yes, I'm at 1 hour 31 minutes here, but even if you have left the building or you can't take how long it is, I've been asked, Matt, try and do shorter presentations. Well, then watch the video in short increments, please. Okay, if you can't handle long sessions, then watch it in short increments. My goal is getting the truth out there. Okay, so it might not be the greatest presentation on the planet, but this is the best I can do. All right. So we've covered quite a bit, and I hope that this idea of narrative and advocacy framing translates religious euphemisms into civic language that courts and media understand. Okay, because ultimately that's what's going to have to stay, not necessarily a weed class among Jehovah's Witnesses that is controlling the narrative to protect their nasty, pharisaical, self-righteous, pedantic, awful, corrupt controllers that have got a lot to lose and a lot to hide. So we're going to go into, what point is this? Point 4. So I'm looking at my notes here. Psychological and social considerations. Whistleblowers from such systems experience identity shock. I mean, my situation, I had a big health thing. I mean, only got a fraction of what's happened to me. But put on top of that identity shock. So loss of an entire social ecosystem, or now you link up with a psychologist because you're dying and your brain is having a meltdown. And they tell you, oh, geez, man, you're in some real unhealthy situation. And now you're going, who am I? Where am I? I've been lied to, and I've lost my social ecosystem, or I've lost trust, and I'm having to start again. Yeah, it's a massive thing, massive shock, trauma. Somebody said in a recovering community, says we've all got our sunburn. Talking about, even discussing like this on a channel like this, it can trigger people. Here's another consideration: economic collapse due to decades of dependence. you've been living off green handshakes, or you've been living off the goodwill of the community. How about chronic fear? Oh, I don't know what's going to happen now. I fear death, or I fear repercussions from God himself, or what do I do? You know, how do I restructure my belief system and try and rebuild my mind after crystallized thinking? What do I do from all of this internal conditioning? Yeah, that's huge. So a trauma-informed advocate or psychologist experienced in high control groups is crucial. Dr. Hassan tells you, I was of this particular belief structure. Or he tells you openly, he says, I was a Moonie, you know. And again, we've got to respect Moonies. But he tells you, no, this is what he faced as a Moonie. This wasn't cool for him. So would he be a useful trauma-informed advocate? Yes, he would. I mean, he's respected very, very well. He knows about high control groups. Dr. Lynn Katz, I would say there's another one. It is very, very effective. So that's useful for Deborah Lynn Katz, that is. Dr. Deborah Lynn Katz. There's a lot of respect. So they are, and I'm not putting one above another. You've got to take a look at ones who have got peer-reviewed work, and it's essential for recovery, for producing credible psychological reports if needed in court. Okay? Don't go in there with sloppy work. You are going to get pulverized. Okay? Norway is struggling. Norway government is struggling. It's gone all the way to Supreme Court. So what chance does your average citizen, your average whistleblower have? So let's try and simplify it. Point number 5. Simplified justice path summary. Documentation with a focus on proving lifelong service under control, with the outcome of evidentiary basis for employment and coercion. Okay? Put that there. That's what's happened. Get good legal framing. Number 2. Labor rights and whistleblower retaliation. Why? To bring it under secular jurisdiction. 3. Rights bodies. Human rights, ombudsman. Why? For civil protection and moral leverage. 4. Collective voice. So have other Jehovah's Witnesses, active Jehovah's Witnesses, not just ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm not saying that's not useful. It's very, very useful. But the point is to have your spectrum. Okay? So that your legal cases aren't weighted one way and they just dismiss an entire group. Have your spectrum. No, this one is still a Jehovah's Witness. Oh, really? This one is a lawyer, Jehovah's Witness. This one is an incentivized Jehovah's Witness. This is a non-incentivized Jehovah's Witness. This is a Jehovah's Witness that represents this part of the religion. So it's not just confined to one particular sector that can be dismissed. And so that, when you've got other full-time Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-JWs, or ones that have also been whistleblowers that have been kicked out, or ones that have fallen into various traps or broken the rules as well, it's all useful. All useful. Okay? Because now it gives amplified legitimacy to what's happening in the bigger picture. 5. Psychological support. Counter-conditioning trauma. Why? Gives credible testimony and healing. So folks, that's been pretty long. Where are we? 1 hour, 40 minutes almost. So the definition of volunteering, when you take a look at United Nations recognizing volunteer work, they see it as volunteering that is freely chosen. Okay, that's how they see it. But in Jehovah's Witnesses, it's framed as a lifelong spiritual commitment with written commitments, our quotas, okay, total dedication and institutional supervision. It's voluntary only in appearance, whereas the United Nations, they look at it very, very differently. So some references: UNV, ILO Convention number 175. That is useful. So people think that volunteers can withdraw at any time without penalty or loss of community standing. The reality is, amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, when you leave, it brings social, spiritual, economic punishment. Loss of housing, loss of family, loss of community, and loss of reputation. You're labeled unfaithful or apostate, or you are pushed into a situation that you have to go to a support group because psychologically you've been harmed through violence, psychological violence, as Norway wants to now make very, very clear. And that is the issue. So in closing, I want to just take a moment to thank everyone who has taken the time to watch, listen, interact, and think deeply about what we've explored here. To my family, my friends, and those offering support behind the scenes, and even those who present counter arguments, thank you. Every viewpoint matters in helping us grow toward understanding and protection of the vulnerable. To those formulating ways to build fair systems, defend conscience, and to protect children, to protect those that genuinely want to live in a way that is elevated spiritually, your work matters. What we do now defines the kind of world that we are going to live in, or the kind of world that we are going to shape or even leave behind. So let's continue working together to build safe communities, religious, non-religious, and everything in between, where truth, compassion, and accountability can coexist. And that is how we create a sustainable, elevated planet, fulfilling its rightful place in the universe. So you watching this are the reason I'm here. Your awareness, your courage, your willingness to engage, that's what makes this effort possible. And so if this message resonates with you, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It helps expand awareness and equips the channel to keep doing more to protect, inform, and uplift people. And so to all who have joined and contributed, those that are connected or surpassed this work, and there are many talented persons that are growing in number, who are simplifying it and carrying it further in much, much better ways. You are deeply, deeply appreciated. So this is Matthew Millais Gray signing off. Let's keep shining light where it's needed most. Thank you again, truly.